and welcome back to ITQ's Private Cloud Café. In a morning edition of the Private Cloud Café, today I have a chat with our own CTO, Jeffrey Kusters, about a topic that's near and dear to him, which is hybrid cloud. And we're going to basically talk a little bit about, what does the hybrid cloud entail? We're going to talk about public, private cloud. Do they interfere? Do they integrate? What are challenges that we're seeing? So, without further ado, Jeff, welcome to a kind of a new podcast for you.
Yeah. Good morning. This is a whole new setting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
So in the Private Cloud Cafe, we're going to dive into the topic I just introduced. But before we do, we have a section of the show which is not uncommon to you because we kind of stole it from When Shit Hits the Fan, the other podcast that we're both creating, which is our rapid fire questions.
Yeah, I was afraid that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. So, ready?
Yep.
Public or private cloud?
Private cloud.
Automation or manual control?
Automation.
Scalability or stability?
Stability.
Pets or cattle?
Cattle.
Cloud native or cloud enabled?
Cloud native.
Okay. So any of the you were quite fast with all of the all of the answers.
Yeah.
Let's go through either one of them.
Yeah.
Public or private? Why? You chose private.
Yeah, quite fast. I think it's it's very top of mind these days, especially in the European Union, of course. While public cloud definitely has its place in the market, still has. I do believe that private cloud is really becoming more relevant to customers today than it even was before. So for now it's a private cloud. Yeah.
Okay. Automation or manual control is kind of a given, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty. If you're still doing everything manual these days, you probably need to call us.
Scalability or stability is one you had to think about a little bit.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I truly believe that you can have both. There's a big misconception, I think, in the market that you need to choose between, am I going to do things slow and static, because then it's stable and reliable. And that's definitely not the case. If you look at what are they called? I think DORA. They do an annual DevOps analysis, DevOps reports, state of DevOps, and what they see in their surveys is that companies who have really transformed into cloud native companies, who are really doing multiple deployments per day, who are really embracing the DevOps mindset, they both are much faster in deployments, so speed is there, but they also have way less impact from outages and such. So if you're really successful in transforming your company to being cloud native, you can really have both.
And that's kind of a different mindset, right? So building something or designing and building something of which it'll break.
Yeah, that's you design for failure. That's the whole idea, I think. And that's definitely something that was kind of revolutionized thanks to public cloud, what the hyperscalers did. I think everyone is familiar with the famous the chaos monkey and the whole practice of chaos engineering that spun out of that, which is deliberately causing outages in your infrastructure to just make sure that your application and your business is not impacted by it. So that because you design for failure, and that's quite different than what we were used to do back in the day, was designed for stability. You do everything in the infrastructure, make things redundant, make sure that if an application fails, then you can, restart it in a different data center or a different host and all these measures. And that's a whole different kind of paradigm as opposed to designing for failure, where you just, it's a given that, a zone in a cloud will fall over. It will definitely fail at some point. Then your application needs to be resilient. And I think that's the key in combining these two things together, speed and stability.
Do you think then that the way we used to build data centers was around the fact that applications were not built for failure before. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
massive monolith that could break, will break, or
Yeah.
has challenges, from a lifecycle management perspective or whatsoever. And then vMotion came,
Yeah.
and that was kind of how we build disaster recovery around applications.
Yeah, as you know, as infrastructure architects, you were always busy with looking at kind of your failure domains. So looking at, what different kind of level or layer of my environment can I expect failures on a data center level, on an infrastructure level. So I don't know, storage layer or network, and all the way up, and then you mitigate by putting in measures to either lower the risk of so the chance that it will fail, making stuff redundant and on the component level. But then if it fails, that you're also ready to kind of automatically recover from it as fast as possible. And that was indeed 100% designed around the constraints that were kind of opposed by the application landscape. That's 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fourth question I asked you around the pets or kettle it fully ties into that. The analogy, could you briefly explain what we mean with it?
Yeah, so I don't hope that PETA is looking is looking at us, but no, the whole kind of analogy is that pets are animals that you take care of. If they get sick, you take them to a vet, and you basically kind of nurture them and cuddle them, and you really take care of them. And then if you have like I don't know 100,000 chickens running around, as in cattle, if then one of them gets sick, you just get rid of it and then buy a new chicken. That's basically the whole paradigm shift, which is not so nice to say about animals. But if you take that analogy and then look at workloads and applications, then the whole idea is, if something breaks, then you just redeploy it as quickly as possible. You just throw away the old, you redeploy, because you know that once you redeploy, that it will be in a known good state. So that's where infrastructure as code, also the kind of designing for failure, that whole mindset is definitely tied into this.
Yeah, and I think that fully ties into one of the topics I want to talk to you about today as well, which is the cloud operating model.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's dive into the main interview. So we already kind of touched upon public versus private cloud, but and you chose private cloud in the first section. But is the private cloud making a comeback, or did it never really leave?
I think that's also a bit of both, to be honest. So it never left. Let's be very clear that private cloud is still, running. All the corporates, all the enterprises are 100% relying on private cloud. That's not saying that they are not using public cloud as well, but they are definitely running private cloud. So it never left. I think in the last 10 years or so, it did move a bit to the background in terms of what's hot and happening, because their public cloud was definitely a strong voice in the market. So it's a bit of both, but I think we also have a bit of a definition problem, because what is a private cloud? Is that a private data center? Is that something a building you own as a customer? Is that just running virtualization with some VMs? And I think that we need to be a bit clearer on the definition. And in my belief, it's not tied to a location. So you can run a private cloud on your own data center. You can run it on a hosted environment. There are multiple ways where you can run a private cloud, and it needs to also conform to what we kind of the original NIST definition of cloud computing, which is, let's see if I can recall all 5 of them. You need to have virtualized pooled resources, broad network access. You need to be in control of cost, elasticity. Help me out. What's the 5th one?
Dude, you're the hybrid cloud expert.
Anyways, you get the idea. You need to be much more than just a virtualization platform running VMs. So there is a lot of misconception in my belief that we call everything that's running in a private data center, that we call that a private cloud. But there's definitely a transformation you need to undergo. If you go to public cloud or you go to private cloud, it doesn't really matter. But you need to make sure that all the stuff we just talked about, designing for failure, automation, infra as code, all these kind of new kind of paradigms, they need to be, they need to have a place in your private cloud strategy as well. So yeah, that's at least my belief if I look at the whole definition problem.
Yeah, so the other way around works as well, right? So if I have a virtual data center right now, or a software-defined data center, or any form of data center in my own environment, that is not per definition a private cloud.
No, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly the point. And it's so in my mind, a private cloud with the emphasis on private is all about control, about kind of accountability. Yeah, who's the owner of the platform? Do you really have? How do you say? Are you really sure that you are the one who is in control of your data? I think especially now with all the geopolitics going on, that's I think the most strongest kind of point in when is something a private cloud. So it's all about jurisdiction, it's about control, those kinds of topics. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll dive into geopolitics in the next episode together with Francisco Perez.
Yeah.
Going back to private cloud, what is the single biggest misconception customers have currently about private cloud?
Yeah, I think we already touched a bit on it. That it's tied to a location, and that's not the case. So you can run a private cloud, on a platform like IBM, for example. If you look at IBM Cloud, you can definitely run a private cloud there, or even on, on one of the regional cloud service providers. There are many of them running a VMware cloud environment. You can 100% run a private cloud on top of those platforms, because if you have the keys, if you're in control, if you can ensure where your data resides, if there's no kind of US Cloud Act hanging above your environment, then you can quote unquote talk about a private cloud. And yeah, again, I think the big misconception is that if I run a data center myself, then I automatically have a private cloud. And yeah, my perception, that's not the case.
I guess that one of the essential components of having a private cloud is also to have a cloud operating model, something we briefly touched upon.
Yeah.
So what is a cloud operating model, and how does it save money for organizations?
So a cloud operating model is just a way of saying, how do you kind of operationalize your cloud environment? And what we see a lot at companies who are running a quote unquote hybrid cloud. So they have their own data center or a private cloud running. They have maybe multiple deployments in hyperscalers. Then you see that it's very kind of disconnected from each other. You have a team with their own sets of tools, their own principles, their own processes. They are taking care of the data center part. Then you have a different part of the organization and a team taking care of Azure, for example, a different team taking care of AWS, and it's all super disconnected. So there is a lot of inefficiency, if you just boil it down, in how these environments are operated. And the aim of a cloud operating model is to make that as consistent as possible. So it's a strong emphasis on people and process. How do you do things? And that's very much the aim of the cloud operating model, to make that as efficient and consistent across all these different environments. And yeah, I think if you look at kind of the benefits, what was the second part of your question?
What kind of cost savings?
Cost savings, yeah.
Can an organization expect?
Yeah, if you just simply look at, what's kind of the biggest expense in an IT department, that's human cost, right?
Yeah.
It's salaries and FTE costs. So if you can do more with less people, then that's directly a cost saver. And that's just, the top of the iceberg, because part of the cloud operating model is also how are you in control of your expenses, so how your cloud spend. So in a cloud operating model, you have a consistent way of keeping track of where do I spend my money, especially on public cloud. Yeah, we know that's a very big problem. There are multiple studies out there already, and from the big analyst firms like Gartner. I believe I read one last week where it was kind of very contradictory because they had like by 2025, 90% of customers will run in a hybrid environment. And then at the same time, 50% will fail to get the benefits out of it by 2029. And the whole kind of reason for, that Gartner uncovered is that they have no quote unquote governance in place. So, and that to me directly kind of translates to a lack of a cloud operating model, because governance is, how are you in control of your environment? And yeah, the solution to get in control is the cloud operating model. And if you then dive into FinOps as an example, so financial operations on public cloud, that's where a huge cost saver is pretty much on the table for every company who is using public cloud or a hybrid cloud. I think there are some estimates that like if you do not have any FinOps in place, and you go in with first of all with a solution to take care of FinOps, that can be from any vendor. But if you then kind of optimize and organize around that solution to make sure that you're, making sure that stuff that gets deployed in public cloud that's not being used anymore, for test purposes, just by making sure that you delete that, yes, because every resource costs money in public cloud, by right sizing, by making sure that you make, well, quote unquote, smart decisions in the way that you architect your cloud environment. By just doing these things, you can save, 30% off the bat on your entire cloud bill. And that's, a number that's been floating around for many years. I remember Pat Gelsinger on stage when they just acquired Cloud Health at one of the Explore events. That was, his big statement. We can save 30% on any cloud bill. Just, deploy Cloud Health, get us in front of a customer, and we can save 30%. And that same number holds true if you look across the industry. So, yeah, lots of ways where you can directly save costs using a cloud operating model. Yeah.
So this is probably kind of a bold statement, but would you say that if a customer does not have a cloud operating model, a transition to a private cloud is just a matter of failure?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, just look at the number that Gartner uncovered. 50% of companies will just fail to reap the benefits, and that's what we're seeing in the market, right? A lot of disillusion around, hey, but cloud was supposed to make my IT cheaper. Cloud was supposed to make it all faster and be more flexible. And I've been saying this for quite some years. If you don't transform your people, process, and technology around your whole new paradigm, which is the cloud model, then you will just move your workloads to a different place and have the same challenges. What's the number one reason why CIOs and decision makers were kind of convinced to move everything to cloud? That's because the promise was it will become cheaper. And there was, the end statement was it will become cheaper. Let me give you a simple example, Johan. If you do a lift and shift migration from on-prem to public cloud, which is basically just picking up a virtual machine with an application and then moving it to public cloud. The promise of public cloud was, scaling up and down, flexibly following your demand. It would become cheaper. So how does picking up a machine from a location, running a traditional application with a simple database? Let's keep it simple. If you pick that up and you move it to a public cloud, how is that application or that instance then automatically going to scale up and down? That's not happening. You need to transform. You need to make sure that the application becomes more cloud native, so it can, and the underlying cloud infrastructure can scale up and down. So in other words, you need to re-platform or re-architect your application to really reap the benefits of the cloud model. So if you're not putting in that work, then yeah, I can assure you, you will just move your problems to a different place.
Yeah, and we saw, to tie into that, prior to COVID happening, we saw that cloud costs were X. Like there was a cost tied to running a virtual machine in cloud.
Yeah.
And because of the popularity of cloud, at all of a sudden when the whole world locked down, people wanted to work from home. We saw all of a sudden that the cloud cost rise as well because of power consumption, because of scalability, and suddenly customers running virtual machines in cloud that had to pay a certain money now saw an increase of their cloud bill suddenly happening because of that. And I totally agree. If you don't re-platform what you put into cloud, then ultimately you'll pay the bill for that, literally.
Yeah, and I have kind of an example that pops in my mind now. Now we're having this discussion is one of the payment processing companies in Europe. In my mind, I never understood why they didn't kind of accelerate their transformation, and COVID really kind of made it clear to me. There was kind of a big missed opportunity for them, because all the PIN transactions in the shops were non-existent because all the shops were closed, the restaurants were closed. So if you would have transformed your landscape to a cloud native landscape that can basically scale down to zero, which is possible in using cloud technology, then your cloud bill also goes to, well, probably not zero because you need to have a kind of a foundational environment in place, but the cloud spend would go drastically down. They didn't make the transformation yet before COVID. So they had, the cloud bill was on a very high level. It stayed on that level because they didn't re-architect. They didn't get the benefits out of the cloud model because they didn't put in the effort yet. And yeah, that was for me a clear example. Like, okay, public cloud, the model really works. Yeah, that's there, but you need to make use of it, and otherwise it's just again moving problems from one location to the other.
So kind of, we talked about replatforming, and I kind of want to tie into that together with like the topic of the cloud operating model. So many organizations heavily rely on a kind of a traditional way of automating using scripts. Are these organizations doomed in the age of private cloud?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So first of all, I think that really sounds like, are they going to win or are they going to lose? And that's something that we're quite good at in IT. We always like to think in binaries. So either, something wins or something loses. I think scripts, they have their place, within the IT ecosystem. And if you're already, making good use of them, if you already made some strides into kind of automating your stops or your stuff in scripts, then, good for you. That's already a big step up from doing everything manually. But scripts are challenging. They can be, a couple of risks that I immediately think of is they're very kind of fault error prone. So if something changes in your environment and you don't update the scripts, then they will fail miserably because the environment is different from what you defined in the script, kind of as an expectation. And what I also see a lot happening in companies is that it kind of imposes the risk of what we call like hero engineering. So you have like one or two really smart guys and they're full knee deep in building the scripts and tying everything together. And then someone new comes in, or one of these guys leaves the company, and then you look at the scripts and you have no clue what's going on because there's like maybe 5, maybe 10 years of kind of proprietary experience in those scripts, and then nobody has a clue on how to maintain them and how to fix things and when they break. So yes, ultimately, I think you need to transition away from them and use kind of more modern principles, like more declarative automation, policy-based, infra code, whatever label you want to put on it. But I think they have a good foundation already. The mindset is good. You don't want to do stuff manually. You want to automate it, but then, please take the next step and do it in a proper way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you touched upon, and we've seen many customers, having those challenges of those scripts. We literally work with a big customer in France where, as we called him, the chief scripting officer left the company all of a sudden, and the customer was lost.
Yeah.
They couldn't deploy any new virtual machines. They couldn't deploy any new networks. They couldn't deploy anything. And ultimately, we helped them by deploying a modern way of automating things,
Yeah.
using declarative management, using modern tools like Ansible and Terraform, and but yeah, I think that's a great point, and definitely a trend that we're seeing, and will definitely help you also in automating things for public, private doesn't really matter. It's
No, that's
one big thing.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the power of the and this also ties into the cloud operating model. So the way that you kind of the philosophy and the mindset behind wanting to automate, that's 100% part of the cloud operating model, because especially in cloud environments, you don't want to point and click in your environment. You want to do everything as repeatable and consistent as possible. Yeah, and then you need to have a modern way of automating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it perfectly ties into another point I want to touch upon, is that, like, how do private clouds give more control and flexibility compared to public clouds?
That's a good one. So I think in the end, kind of your span of control is bigger in private cloud. So if you consume public cloud services, then kind of the stuff that you abstract away and kind of quote unquote outsource to your public cloud provider, I think that's bigger within public cloud, and that can be good, because that also means you don't have to, I don't know, keep the hardware up and running. And it's all kind of in the shared responsibility model of the cloud provider. That's all the stuff that they take care of. But in the end, I think if you use the word control again, you have a bigger control over your environment in a private cloud. So, and the benefit, of course, is that you are also able to come up with new kind of innovative solutions yourself. Just look at private AI as an example. It's a topic dear to your heart, I know. But if as long as you have full control over the infrastructure stack and the hardware stack, you are also in control in the way that how do you deploy your private AI environment, as an example. Yeah, I think that's control. That's, I think, the short answer.
Yeah, so that's I think, like, there's some misconceptions around private cloud as well, and I think control is definitely not a misconception. It's definitely something that stands out. But in the first section of the conversation we talked about scalability versus stability.
Yeah.
And scalability is an interesting topic. Do you think that a private cloud could ever be as scalable and flexible as a public cloud?
Depends on the scope of what you want to scale. Yeah, let's be simple. If tomorrow I want to spin up, I don't know, 1,000 VMs or 2,000 VMs, on a hyperscaler, it's quote unquote unlimited capacity. Well, we already know that in specific cases that's also not the case, because they are also bound by the physical constraints like data centers and such. But yeah, I think the amount of resources that cloud providers have available is bigger. So in that sense, your private cloud scalability is potentially a bit lower. But if you just look at from a workload perspective or an application perspective, how quickly can you scale up with more resources, then definitely you can achieve the same, because look at stuff like Kubernetes, which is part of every private cloud, I would argue. That the whole definition of Kubernetes is being scalable and orchestrate all these different containers across all these different nodes and pods and whatnot. So there's definitely an element there that can really achieve the same as in public cloud. Yeah.
So we touched upon many topics: scalability, flexibility, the cloud operating model, automation, control, tying it all together. And if there's one advice that you would give an organization starting their own private cloud journey, what would it be?
Well, the first of all, let's say just buy a platform. No, that's the easy one.
Swipe a credit card. No.
Yeah. No, I think it's a summary of our entire conversation. It's don't start with technology. It start with a cloud operating model or whatever name you put on it. But think about the way that you want to operate your environment and how you want to consume your environment. And that's first and and in the first and cases that thinking about people and process. Who are your customers? Who are you kind of building the environment for? And second is, how are your IT teams going to operate it? And then make a deliberate decision about, let's call it, the buy versus make decision. Because if if you're kind of a tech savvy company with a lot of smart engineers, and we all know the examples, then yes, you could probably build your own stuff using Kubernetes, that's a good way. But the average company isn't Spotify, isn't Uber. We don't have they don't have 100 PhDs and computer scientists working on a platform building their own open source projects to take care of stuff. If you're not in the business of IT, then probably buying a platform is the faster route. And that all boils down to maybe something that we haven't touched upon yet, but I think is super important in this context, is what is like the single resource that let's call it a CIO, never has enough of. It's not money. Well, it could be money, but they can probably, you can go to a board and get more money or investors or whatever. In the end, it's time. All the time that you spend or waste in a negative way, you can never get it back. So I think time is kind of the key constraint topic that you should kind of design your whole philosophy around. And then building an entire platform yourself using open source technology that, if you have the time, that's good for you, go for it. You have the smart people to do it. But if you don't, then just look at the right platform that you can simply buy off the shelf. That would be my biggest advice.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being a guest in ITQ's Private Cloud Café.
Very welcome.
So if you have any questions about the topics we talked about, private cloud, public cloud, cloud operating model, feel free to reach out through our common channels. In the next episode, we'll have a conversation with Francisco Perez van der Oort, one of our founders, about the topic of geopolitics and the impact of geopolitics in the private cloud. For now, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.